Hi, everybody. I'm Alice K. Reckelhaus from SufferingWell. Today, we're going to talk about the Rosary some more, but I'm specifically going to share with you 3 ways that repetition has helped me spiritually. So stay tuned. If you continually think about negative things, your mind is going to find it easier to think about negative things. If you continually think about positive things, your mind is going to find it easy to think about positive things. So, okay, so what's the big deal with that? Well, let me give you a couple of examples, and I'm going to give these from the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, because I want to make this easy and accessible not only for Catholics but also for Protestants. And I know that we've got the Mary thing hanging over us that Protestants will object to. We'll talk about that later, and I do have some videos about that already, so I'll link those in the description box below too, but we will talk about it in the context of the Rosary. However, the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, we repeat 50 times. For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world. You know what? I have found that doing that, and for a while I was saying that prayer 3 times a day. So that's 150 times. That was when I was going through my worst period of mourning over my husband. And it just changed my life. The first time that I heard that prayer, I actually thought it was the Rosary because there was repetition, and that's all that I knew about the Rosary. And I was like, well, what's wrong with this prayer? That's a good thing that they're saying. So I started praying it, and I first thought, for the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world. Yeah, that's a pretty big ask, right? And even though I knew God was capable of that, it was a little bit too much for my faith. And I think that I had pretty strong faith even at that time. After praying that over and over and over, I seriously do believe that God can change the world, the whole world. He can have mercy on everyone in the world. There is still the question of free choice, which he gives to all of us. So he doesn't force anybody to change, but I'm not afraid to pray that God would have mercy on the whole world, because I've prayed that over and over and over. I've kind of, I guess you could say, brainwashed myself into believing that in a way, but it's a way of transforming your mind. It wasn't thoughtless. I didn't pray it without meaning. I have meant that all the many, many thousands of times that I've prayed that now in the last about 3 years or so. Well, almost 4 years. So I've prayed it many, many, many times. And I'll share in another video some of the things that I do to keep that from becoming meaningless, because when you repeat something that many times, it can become meaningless. You have to make an effort for it not to become meaningless. Okay, another example. As a Protestant, and this is not to try to, say, oh, Catholics are better than Protestants or anything. I'm just trying to show you some of these tools that if you're a Protestant, you can use. If you're a Catholic, I hope you are using it. But if not, here's why. So another thing with the chaplet is that you pray just one time in the chaplet, the Lord's Prayer, what Protestants call the Lord's Prayer, what Catholics call the Our Father. And, I already had that memorized. I prayed it, I don't know how many times, millions of times, probably, as a Protestant. But as I began praying that every day in the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and like I said, sometimes 3 times a day, God started really working in my heart, where it says, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Or a lot of Protestants will say, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. God started really convicting me about people that I didn't realize I hadn't forgiven, and some people that I had tried to forgive over and over and over, but those unforgiving thoughts and that anger and sometimes fear would always come back to me. And I kept saying, Lord, I want to forgive them. Please help me to forgive them. Through the Lord's Prayer, it was like for a while every day, and then later about once a week, he would bring up somebody I hadn't forgiven. Often that I just didn't even realize I hadn't forgiven. And some of those were pretty easy to just turn over into him and, oh, Lord, I'm sorry that I had forgotten that I hadn't forgiven them. And so I need to do that. So I forgave them. Some of them were a little bit harder. And I found myself actually wanting to hold on to that unforgiveness. But because of praying that over and over, the Lord slowly but surely changed my mind. And then there was the person who raped me, the man who raped me, many, many years ago, back in my 20s, and I'm now in my 60s, who I had tried many, many times. I had begged God to help me to forgive him, and I couldn't. And I share about how that forgiveness came about. I've shared that many times when I talk about Maria Goretti. So I will also link that here. I won't tell you about that. But it was that repetition of the Our Father 3 times a day, or at least once a day, that brought that about. Let me give you one more quick example. After I had been through a lot of really horrible things for many years, and it was hard for me to even believe that God loved me. This was back quite a few years ago. And I had read Dr. Caroline Leaf's work, and I was reading in my Bible one day in Romans 12, where he says, he talks about the renewing of our minds. And I was just like, Lord, I need to have my mind renewed. And I thought about Dr. Leaf's work. And so what I started doing was I would find the truth. I asked God to show me the lies that Satan was telling me, like I'm worthless and stuff, or I'm always going to be depressed. I will never get past this depression. And then I asked God to help me find verses that told the truth about that. So, for example, he gives me beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. And so what I would do is I would take 70 of something. For a while I used beans, but then those started getting kind of icky from handling them. And then I used pennies, but those were kind of heavy. I finally settled on safety pins, and I would put 70 of them in my pocket. And there's nothing magical about the number 70. I know 7 is really special and everything, but I just chose that because it was a large number, and that's what came to mind. And maybe God put that number in my mind. I don't know. But what I would do is throughout the day, I would repeat the truth. He gives me beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. And I would move one of those safety pins from that pocket to the pocket where I put the safety pins representing what I had already said. I repeated those things over and over and over. And you know what? It renewed my mind. I still use that system sometimes when I find that I'm listening to the lies of the enemy, that they've become my lies, and I need to have my mind renewed. So I will ask God to show me a Bible verse that will tell me what he really thinks, what the truth is. And I will repeat that over and over and over. Sometimes it takes weeks of repeating it 70 times a day before my brain and my mind and my heart actually change. So there is real power in repetition. And that's one of the things that I think is really good about the repetition in the Rosary, the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and many of the other prayers that we pray. All right, I hope that that helped you. I hope that that sparked some ideas in you. Even if you're not interested in the Rosary, I hope that that sparked ideas of other ways that you could use those principles. I'll see you all later. I love you. Bye-bye.